Welcome to the second part of Broken. We're going to be looking at Sarah and Abraham. One quick thing, if you haven't gone back, if this is your first video with us, maybe go back and watch at least the intro to the series Broken so you can kind of see what's up and see what's going on through this. I kind of set it up in that video. Also, go back and watch some of the other ones too. They're all there for you to watch. So this one is going to be looking, as I said, at Sarah and Abraham. You can find their story in Genesis 12 through 25. And their story is kind of interesting because they both kind of deal with this thing that we all deal with. I mean, they kind of deal with this topic that God says something and it kind of gets stuck in the waiting a little bit, and they have to wait. And they wait a really long time. And some of us have trouble waiting a matter of minutes. These guys had to wait years for God's promise to come true. So we're going to look through, kind of hop around a little bit through Genesis 12 through 25. So kind of take some time, maybe read that. You'll kind of get some Abraham story there. But the first one, Genesis 12, 1 through 3. The Lord said to Abram, Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse. And all the people of the earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went, and the Lord as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he set out for Haran. And 75 years, kind of keep that in mind. And his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. So now we're kind of in this place, they're traveling around, and God had given them this promise. God had said, I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'm going to bless you. You're going to be a big guy to deal with. But they were waiting. And they kind of went to this place. They did what God said. And now they're kind of waiting there. And Abraham was kind of wrestling with doubt. He was kind of wrestling with, is God really going to do what he says? I don't really know. I'm just kind of struggling with this. So we pick him up in Genesis 15. And it says, But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I have remained childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. Now, God, back then, they handed things down. Kind of like we do now, but it was kind of different. They handed it to their firstborn, and that's who got it. As that kind of comes up as a struggle later in Genesis between two brothers, and they kind of fight over this kind of thing. But as we do now, we hand things down from generation to generation. It's kind of what's going on, but God said he was going to have many nations. He was going to have many descendants. He was going to have people in his family. But he didn't have anything. He didn't have anyone. And in the Bible times, if you didn't have an heir, a son, or they would give it to your next servant. And that's not Abraham. That's not going to be Abraham's bloodline. So, in verse 3, and Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant will be my heir. So it's kind of like that's the way it worked. If you didn't have a son, you gave it to your servant. And that's not the way Abraham wanted it, because that's not the way it was working in his. I can't have this without this. Verse 4, Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. So God took him outside, and he kind of did this thing. He kind of like, hey, look up there. Count those, if you can. Because God knows how many stars are up there, but we have no business. We lose count before we even try. So God kind of took him up and was like, look up there. You're going to have descendants. You're going to have blessings. You're going to have what I say you're going to have. You just got to wait for it. You got to kind of be there. And I think Abraham was just kind of wrestling with this doubt that he wasn't really going to have a son. He was 75 years old, probably plus now, and he's approaching 80, and he's getting old. So then it's Sarah's turn. And Sarah starts having her doubt. In chapter 18, verse 10, it says, "Then one of them said, 'I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son.' Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Abraham said to Sarah, Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself and thought, 'After I'm worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?'" So it's kind of like, now that I'm old, I'm going to have a kid? Yeah, right. You're crazy. I can't do that. So she's kind of like laughing at God in her doubt. And God calls her on it. God's kind of like, the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh?" Now, if you're Sarah still listening on this conversation, you're kind of like, "Whoops, I laughed." And, will I really have a child now that I'm old? And so Sarah is kind of like, "I didn't laugh." After this verse, and later on in chapter 18, God kind of is like, "I didn't laugh." And God's like, "Yeah, you did. I was there. I know. You laughed." And then verse 14, "Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." So it's kind of like God kind of lays down, he kind of puts the foot down with him. It's kind of like, you will have the son next year. Is anything too hard for God? Is anything too hard for him? And a lot of the times when we kind of wrestle with things aren't going the way we plan, things aren't going how we want, things are just kind of blah, and we're not where we want to be, and we just feel like there should be more. God's not really doing anything for us. Our financials suck, and this is bad, and the car broke down, and God's just kind of like not doing it. But is anything too hard for him? Chapter 21, verse 1. "Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised." Another promise. "Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him." Now, I want to take a trip back here to the promise that God said. So God had to Isaac, and the story kind of continues. After that, there was something that Abraham had to do that got really hard with Isaac, and you can read about that. But I want to look at verse 5, back in chapter 15, verse 5. "He took him outside and said, 'Look at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them.' Then he said, 'So shall your offspring be.'" So Abraham kind of taken out, and I picture this because I didn't know there a place like this existed. I kind of live in the city, and there's lights and stuff, and you can't really see anything but like little dots every once in a while in the sky. No stars. You can't really see them very well. So I kind of struggled with this, but I was preparing to kind of teach this lesson at church. I kind of stumbled across this as we took a trip, and my wife and brother had already been up there and already taken this trip once, and they kind of talked about how they drove way out in the middle of nowhere, back out there just north of Niles, Michigan, and they're driving up there, and they kind of get out into the back roads, back out into the country roads, and they kind of go out there where there's no lights. I will reference though that out there's this little like creepy house that kind of sits off back in the shadows back there, and it's got it's illuminated, so it kind of sits there, but it looks like a house out of Scream or Halloween or something back there, and it's just like waiting to like get you. And so it just kind of ominously sits back there as you kind of like trying to enjoy the stars. And I swear it's like being at a planetarium, and you just kind of laying in the road. It's a back road, so don't think we're laying in the middle of traffic. But you go up there late enough, it's a back country road, there's no cars, and you can kind of lay there and look up. And it was in that moment that I kind of realized that the stars for Abraham represented God's blessings to come, and that he was going to have many descendants. And if you look in the Bible, and you look back at the book of Matthew, you just heard my pages turn. Ha 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 ha. But if you look back at Matthew, you can kind of see that Jesus' bloodline doesn't start where you think it would start. Jesus' bloodline, Jesus' genealogy, Matthew 1, look it up, starts with Abraham. Abraham's line produced Jesus. So Abraham got everything that he was promised. But in his, it came in the form of descendants and blessings and nations and people. And that's what God blessed him with. But the stars, also to us, I think, represent God's blessings. And how he's going to bless us as well. And he is going to be there for us. He's going to bless us. And they're infinite, just like the stars. Count them if you can. We can't count them. There's many blessings for us there. Just kind of look at the stars. So I want to throw that out there. Take some time. If you live in the city, if you live in the country, maybe you've already experienced something like this. But take a chance and go out there, drive somewhere. Go out there. I mean, this is like a 25-minute drive or so for us. Go out there where we went. But go out there and kind of see the stars. See what the blessings that God has for you. And they're there in the stars. And if you do that and you can get a picture, take a picture. Send it to Second Stage Questions. Send it to the email. Kind of want to know. Send your story even. It'd be awesome to kind of hear kind of like the thoughts you have in those moments. Because let me tell you, it was kind of cool and I used it as an illustration. But the stars there were just there. And there's just so many of them. And it's all the blessings that God has. His infinite blessings are there for us.